and Minister, Nicola Grigg. And again, this is a great example of a company that is building a great local business here in Selwyn, but exporting and selling amazing premium brands all around the world. And it's just fantastic to be here and see the growth of this company and what it's been up to. With that, happy to take your questions.
Prime Minister, are you concerned about this company, given that a good chunk of its exports do go to the US?
No, I'm not. And the reason is very simple, which is that while we don't believe that tariffs and trade wars are the way forward for the world or for New Zealand or any country, frankly, we think the world is much better when there's a free movement of goods and services all around the world, and that tariffs aren't great. The reality is that New Zealand has received, obviously, the baseline tariff into the US. There are countries that have received more. But for us, it's actually about making sure we find the right consumers and the right customers in large markets like the US. And many of our exporters that I've spoken to over the last few days and again today are saying they still see really good long-term growth opportunities. But let's be clear, tariffs and a trade war is not good for global economics. New Zealand is a country that has done well without tariffs, as has, I think, the rest of the world. And the impact is not so much the impact in our trading relationship with the US, it's more about what this means for global economics and global headwinds.
What will it mean for New Zealand's economy?
Sorry?
What will it mean for New Zealand's economy?
Well, what it means is our exporters into the US are going to be hit with a 10% baseline tariff. There are other countries that have actually got higher tariffs, and that it may actually mean that we've got a better relative position going into the US because all countries have been hit with the tariff. But also it means that there's about $900 million worth of tariff being levelled at New Zealand exporters, and that will be passed on to US consumers, sadly. And that's why tariffs are not the way to go, because it ends up driving higher prices for US consumers, higher inflation, slows down growth, and as a result that puts real pressure in across the world.
Do you know what the rationale is for that 10% tariff?
Well, it's not a surprise. I mean, the President campaigned very strongly on a tariff agenda. We don't think tariffs is the way that we should be doing international trade, as I've said before, and we'll continue to advocate strongly for that. But ultimately, that's a decision for the President and for the Trump administration in the US. But the reality is that when you put tariffs up, they then end up resulting in higher prices being passed through to the consumers that are importing and receiving those goods. But that is why New Zealand is, relatively well positioned. We have worked incredibly hard over the last year to make sure we create new opportunities everywhere, whether that's in India, whether it's in the GCC, whether it's in the UAE, or whether it's in Vietnam and other places throughout Southeast Asia, to make sure that there is good demand for New Zealand products and services, which there is. Our exporters, I think, are some of the most agile in the world. They are very, very competitive, and we're going to make sure we do everything to support our exporters and advance New Zealand's national interests.
We're trying to respond in the way other countries have in imposing tariffs.
No, we wouldn't, and the reason very simply is that we are a low tariff country and we have benefited from that, and what we wouldn't want to do is raise prices here in New Zealand and add to inflation here in New Zealand by doing that, which is exactly what would happen. So, for us, it's about realising, yes, we don't think the tariffs is a good move at all, but the point is that we've received the same baseline as many other countries. Other countries have received much higher. We back our New Zealand exporters to be able to do business in the US in the long term and also in other parts of the world, and that's why we want to double the value of our exports. That's why Minister McLeay and myself are out there in the world creating opportunities for New Zealand businesses.
Prime Minister, considering our close relationship with the US, do you think this is an act of a friend?
Well, I just say to you that it's not a surprise. I mean, this is a policy that the President campaigned on. He's been very clear about a tariff agenda from becoming President and this new administration. Our issue is that we just don't think tariffs is good for the global economy. Tariffs and trade wars and resultant reciprocal tariffs, all of that just creates huge uncertainty in the world. It creates high inflation, it has currency impacts, it has growth impacts potentially in the global headwinds. So, there's two issues here. One is what is the impact on our trade with the US? I think we're saying, we know, well, not ideal, but we are able to be in a level playing field with other countries exporting into the US. But the bigger worry will be the global impact and the wash-up of the tit-for-tat trade wars that may ensue.
But this is not how friends treat each other, is it?
Well, again, the President in America is completely free to plot its own economic policy under we respect the sovereignty of nation states, and that's not a surprise that this is the agenda they want to run with. We disagree with that agenda. We don't think that is good for global trade. We don't think countries do well when there are high tariffs and when there are trade wars. We much more believe that goods and services should be able to move freely around the world. New Zealand has built itself into a low tariff environment. Our exporters are deeply, deeply competitive. The products and services we sell are in huge demand around the world, and that's why we're opening up as much trade with as many different countries as we possibly can.
And Prime Minister, this assumption from the Trump administration of 20% tariffs in New Zealand, what do you make of that?
Yeah, we don't understand how that number has been calculated, and that is something that we will be discussing with the administration. But the key headline here is that New Zealand has been hit with the baseline 10% tariff that most countries have hit. Obviously, there's been other countries that have had a 30 to 40% impact as well on the tariffs that have been held to them. And that will create, at least our relative competitiveness. We've got a level playing field as we export into that market. But the reality is, the sad reality is that prices are going to go up for American consumers. That will drive inflation, that will drive interest rates up, and that will slow an economy down.
Prime Minister, in terms of the Treaty Principles Bill, Labor says it's to be reported back to Parliament tomorrow. Is that true?
I don't comment on the inner workings of a select committee and parliamentary select committee. They are the decisions for the select committees to make as part of the parliamentary wing of our democracy. But as I've said before, it's important that we've listened to the submissions. We understand there are strong views on all sides of it, and that'll be a decision for the select committee to make.
But Labor says it's being sped up. They say it's an outrageous haste and an appalling lack of process, and they think it's coming through tomorrow. What do you have to say to that?
Yeah, no disrespect. I don't respond to Labor. I respect the parliamentary process, which is the select committee, and the parliamentarians that are on the select committee make those decisions. And I think if you go back and look at Labor's original comments about wanting to kill this bill as quickly as possible, and now sending out mixed messages, that's something that that's up to them. But the bottom line is these are decisions made by the parliamentary select committee, not by the Prime Minister, and it's important that they make them.
So people who have made submissions on the Treaty Principles Bill, can they expect to have their fair say?
Yes, we've had a number of submissions that have been made on strongly held views on both sides of the debate around the Treaty Principles Bill. They're well understood, the positions have been well articulated, and of course any further submissions that are not processed as part of a parliamentary select committee can go on the record as they do for any other process that we have or any other legislation as well. So again, I'm not going to talk specifics about it because it's inappropriate to be doing so. The way that our parliamentary system works, these are decisions for the Parliament to make, and it's the parliamentarians on the select committee themselves to do so.
Back to tariffs.
Yes.
What do you say to sort of the average New Zealander with these tariffs coming on and creating more uncertainty in the economy?
Look, I just say to New Zealanders that we are well positioned. I mean, we have balanced complementary trade with the Americans. We're not contributing to their trade deficits that they're experiencing. We have good relationships with this new administration. I've spoken to President Trump myself. I've met with many of the others in the administration when I was visiting last year. Deputy Prime Minister Peters has actually met with Secretary Rubio and also with Representative Waltz. And obviously, Todd McClay's met with Trade Representative Greer. We have good connections into the administration. Our officials have been talking to officials in the administration for several months, making the case for New Zealand. We don't believe that tariffs and trade wars is the way that we should be doing global trade. We don't think that's good for New Zealand, but frankly, it's not good for the world. And that's why we'll continue to advocate against tariffs as we continue to do. But for New Zealanders, they should know that we have products that are in huge demand globally. New Zealand's relative position when a 10% tariff is levied on all countries selling into the US, what that means is that the American consumer will be paying higher prices for many of these products that are imported. And I back our exporters. They do an incredible job. They sell great products that are in demand all around the world. And that's why we've been out hustling on the world stage, making sure that we turn on trade opportunities for many New Zealand businesses across Southeast Asia. That's why I was in India recently with that exact purpose in mind.
Prime Minister, just on the Chief Human Rights Commissioner, at the March 15th anniversary event, you said Islamophobia has no place in New Zealand. So why does your government continue to back the Human Rights Commissioner when he has made Islamophobic comments?
He mischaracterised completely and quite wrongfully a New Zealand SIS report talking about threats to the Jewish community. and he was wrong about that. He has subsequently apologised about that, but equally the Minister, I know Minister Goldsmith, wants to talk, has or is talking to him about those comments as well. So the key thing is he's apologised, he got that completely wrong, and the Minister's also talking to him.
I mean, the messaging here is pretty different, right? Because the SIS says that the greatest threat to the Jewish community is white supremacists, and he literally said Muslims. Is his role still tenable?
Yes, as I said to you, he completely got that totally wrong and completely mischaracterised that report. He has admitted that, apologised profusely for that, and importantly, the Minister's making those expectations pretty clear as well.
Cool.
Okay, thanks guys, appreciate it. Have a good day. See ya.
Hey, John.